Yoo Soohyun is the best fire DPS in solo leveling Arise, as she has things like permanent type advantage damage, and when you equip her with the correct artifact sets and also her favored stats, she can be absolutely broken, which is why in this video I'll be going over how you can best build Yoo Soohyun. And starting off with her best artifacts, and for the level 55 artifact sets, the armed gear set is going to be one of her best ones, as she does have a lot of defense penetration in her kit, which does make her very similar to Choi Jong-in, which does mean the 2 set bonus of the 5% increase in your attack is amazing, as she is a attack scaler, and then the 4 set effect allowing you to ignore 15% of your target's defense will really play into her defense penetration. And then of course, unlike Choi Jong-in, she can actually crit, which does make the toughness gear set a really good set for her as well, as you can increase your crit rate by 8% on the 2 set effect, and then on the 4 set effect you can increase your critical hit damage by 32% as well, which is always amazing. And then finally, for the level 78 artifacts, the Burning Curse set will by far be her best set overall, as on the 8 set effect you can increase the amount of damage that you do by 30%, whilst also being able to increase your damage by 0.2% every second, which can stack up to 100 times, which is really good, which easily makes this set the best one for her by far. And then for accessories, concentration of firepower is going to be really good, as most of her damage does come from her second basic skill, so being able to increase your basic skill damage by 18% and reduce its cooldown by 18% is going to be really good. And then you also have the expert gear set, as well as also champion on the field, which can be very useful, as they increase your attack stat whenever you do crit. And then you have things like executioner as well to increase your damage by 20% when you attack enemies whilst their HP is at 70% or lower. And then finally, of course, if you are going to run the Burning Curse set, you do want to preferably run it on the 8 set effect so you can get the biggest damage increases possible, which does mean you'll have to run the accessories in order to get that 8 set bonus as well. And then for all of the stats that you do want on her artifacts, let's talk about her main stats. And for her regular artifacts and on the helmet, you want to preferably go for attack percent, or additional attack can also be good. And then for the body armor as well as also the gloves, you'll always get additional defense and also additional attack. And then finally, for the boots, you can either run critical hit damage or defense penetration, depending on what you want to lean into more. However, I do think critical hit damage is overall still better, as you can get defense penetration on the substat of every gear piece in the game, so you don't need to worry about that too much. And then for the accessory main stats, of course, necklace will always give you additional HP. For the bracelet, you'll want fire damage percent. For the ring, it will preferably be attack percent or additional attack. And then finally, the earrings will always give you additional MP as well. And then for substats for all of these pieces, the ones that you are going to want the most are going to be things like defense penetration, as she does buff her own defense penetration through her kits, as well as also damage increase, because she also does buff that through her passive as well. But then of course you do have things like critical hit rate, attack percent, additional attack. All of those 5 stats are going to be the best stats that you do want for her. And then for accessory stats, it will be literally all the exact same things with defense penetration, attack percent, etc. But of course, this time with it being accessories, you'll want critical hit damage as opposed to critical hit rate. And then when it comes to weapons, obviously we do get her own exclusive weapon for free, which is actually Overdrive, and this weapon is pretty damn cool, as you can increase your defense penetration by 4%, which can stack all the way up to 12%, and then you can also increase the damage of her core attack, kill shot, and then also hellfire by 8% as well. And then this damage can also go all the way up to 24%, which is a really good increase, and also the hellfire skill is only really unlocked or usable when you do have her first dupe, so just keep that in mind as well. However, another actually really good weapon for her is going to be the steel longsword, and is definitely by far going to be her best SR weapon, as what you can do with this weapon is you can increase your elemental weakness damage by 4.5%, going all the way up to 12%. And the reason why this is actually so good on her is because her skill kill shot will always deal fire elemental damage as if it was basically hitting the target's elemental weakness, which basically means it will always do type advantage damage with this skill, which does make the steel longsword a really good option for her. And then finally, the steel bow is also amazing because you can increase your crit damage by 9%, going all the way up to 24% as well. So then for the best skills for you to level up for Yoo Soohyun, it's going to be pretty obvious, as her second basic skill, which is kill shot, is going to be by far your best skill to level up, as it's going to be your main source of damage. And the damage of this skill can go from 1450% of her attack all the way to 2175% of Yoo Soohyun's attack, which is really good. And then the same also applies to trick shot, as it has a pretty low cooldown of 10 seconds, and the damage can go from 800% all the way up to 1200% of her attack. You also have her ultimate, which is definitely another one that you want to level up as well, which is zeroed in blast, and all this does is just damage, and it can also activate the magic firearm buff, and the damage of this goes from 2750% of her attack all the way to 4125% of her attack as well. And then the next skill that I'd actually recommend leveling up next is actually going to be her QTE skill, which is Firing Swarm, as this is probably the most useful skill in her actual kit, as in her passive, when she uses certain skills being Trick Shot, Firing Swarm, or Zeroed In Blast, you can apply either the Spotlight buff or you can apply Magic Firearm. And then because you can use her QTE skill to activate both of them, it does mean you can just use her QTE skill once to then get both of the buffs, so then you can just pop off straight away, which overall does make this skill very useful and definitely is something that you should level up as soon as possible. And then we have Perfect Shot, which is her actual core attack, which if you do have one dupe on her, this skill will definitely be one of, if not the most useful skills as well, as when it's 0 dupes, her kit in general doesn't really focus around core attacks. However, when you do have her first dupe, it definitely does. So if you do have one dupe for her, I would definitely 100% recommend that you level this one up first, or definitely one of the ones that you level up first. However, if you don't have that first dupe on her, then it's not as important, but it's still really good, as just like her first basic skill and also QTE skill, you can increase the damage from 800 to 1200% of her attack. So overall, her two basic skills, her QTE skill, her ultimate, and then her core attack are the most important things that you do want to level up, which is pretty much the same thing with every DPS. So then when it comes to her best teams and synergies, she does actually have quite a lot of different things that you can use, and by far the best character that is a definitely must run with her is going to be Emma Laurent, as Emma Laurent can apply the heat emission buff to your whole team, which is really good, as basically this can increase your whole team's defense penetration and also fire damage by 7.77%, which funny enough are the two stats that Yoo Soohyun will like the most. And then of course, Min Byung-gu is going to be another absolutely goated unit to run with her, mainly just because you can fill up your whole team's power gauge by a ton with his QTE skill, so then you can use her ultimate to do a ton of damage, to then trigger the magic fire run buff with her ultimate, so then you can activate magic reaction, to then make your enemies take more damage from fire damage, which is really, really good. So then when building a team for her, you'll want it to look something like this, with her acting as the very last character in all of your rotations, and then your break damage dealer like Emma acting first, so you can deal all the break damage and get all of the buffs that you need, and then you can bring in Min Byung-gu to apply all the debuffs buffs to increase Yoo Soohyun's damage. And then the reason why we do have Yoo Soohyun at the end is so then you can use her QTE skill, so then you can apply both of her buffs, which is really, really good. And then other characters that you could use on this team, you could use someone like Yoo Jin-ho if you are lacking in a bit of break damage, as Yoo Jin-ho can also give a ton of different stat buffs like an attack increase as well as shield generation and also healing through his potion. And then finally, also a character like Libora can also work very nicely in this team, as she can also act as another damage dealer, but is also someone who can apply some very nice debuffs through her charm debuff as well. So then when it also does come to her best shadows, it also does kind of depend on how many dupes that you do have, as if you do have her first dupe, which will help you activate your core attack, it does mean you can use Tusk, who will be amazing, as Tusk's Shadow Authority buff will increase all members' core attack damage by 30%. However, if you don't have that first dupe, then either you'll want to go for Egress for extra crit rate, or Blades for the extra attack stat. And then for other shadows, honestly, my two favorite shadows to use in the game, as I've probably mentioned in every video now, is Tusk, as well as also Iron, as they do just offer so much support with all of your other shadows, as Tusk can actually increase the attack of all of your shadows by 20% for 10 seconds, and Iron is also amazing, as you can give a shield to all of your shadows as well, which will give them super armor. And then also, because you can offer defense decreases through Charge Iron, it will also be really good for Yoo Soohyun, as for example, a team like this doesn't actually have any defense decreasing and only has like damage increases and stuff like that, then it does mean a shadow like Iron will offer you something completely unique and new to your team. So there you have it. Yoo Soohyun is an insane fire DPS and definitely does feel like an upgraded version of Choi Jong-in. However, Choi is obviously still very good. And if you like this video, then don't forget to like and subscribe, as it helps a ton, and click the link down below to support me as a creator, as I'm currently giving away 1,000 free Essence Stones. And most importantly, I'll see you all in the next video. Peace!